You must understand, my objective here was to find proof of you. My name depends upon it.
Proof? What kind of proof?
Incontrovertible evidence of your existence to prove my doubt was wrong. Like hair samples, a tooth, nail clippings, feces.
Well, I have all those things. That seems like a fair deal.
In that case, why not? I shall get you there, to the place you belong. And in return, you will get me to mine. Oh, yes. I'll prove the existence of not just one, but an entire evolutionary branch of missing links. Imagine the headlines then.
Oh, well, you really mean that? You're going to take me?
Of course.
That's a clip from Missing Link. I'm delighted to say it's writer and director Chris Butler is with us. Hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. How long have you been working on this?
I suppose officially it's 5 years, but the truth is it's much longer.
How much longer?
Maybe add another 10.
15 years?
Yeah, I mean, not all the time, obviously, because that would be sad.
No.
But I started writing it maybe 15 years ago.
So that makes it, I think, a labour of love.
Yes.
So would that be standard for an idea for an animation like this, that it would take so long from beginning to end?
No, I think the lion's share of that time is it kind of languishing in one of my sketchbooks or one of my notebooks, and I kind of delved back into it when it was time to come up with a new idea after I finished the last movie. But the 5-year part, that is pretty standard. 4 to 5 years for an animated movie. It's still pretty long.
Okay, yeah, that's a long time. Okay, so explain The Missing Link. Tell us the idea behind your film.
Okay, so the idea is...
Although you should have this off pat now. You've had this idea for 15 years. This had better be a good answer.
I try to make it different every time I talk about it. The idea is there is a Victorian explorer who is infamous for his failures, I guess, and he pursues mythical creatures, and he finds Bigfoot. And it turns out Bigfoot is lonely. He lives in the Pacific Northwest, and he's heard tell stories of the mysterious Yetis in the Himalayas, and he believes this is his long-lost family. So he enlists this explorer to take him on a quest across the world to find his family.
Where did the idea for this? I mean, obviously you said it's taken a long time. What was the heart of this idea?
I suppose that originally I thought, wouldn't it be cool if stop motion had its own Indiana Jones? I wanted to make a big adventure movie. And it's certainly influenced by all these movies and books from my childhood. I was a Sherlock Holmes nut, which is where the setting comes from. It's set in Victorian England to start off with. So it's Sherlock Holmes, Indiana Jones. It's a little bit around the world in 80 days. There's monsters in there. I think that comes from my love of Ray Harryhausen creatures. It's a little bit of a melting pot of everything that I loved.
How would you describe the animation style, Chris? Because we've got a mixture of stop motion and CGI. Is that all happening at the...
Yeah.
Explain what it looks like.
Well, we call it a hybrid. I suppose it really is a stop motion movie. At its heart, it is real puppets. It is physical puppets on real sets being manipulated frame by frame by animators. But we want to tell a broader scope of story. So we pretty much use every trick in the book in order to make that happen. And that includes a lot of digital technology, a lot of new innovations. So there is CG set extensions, which means that we can have bigger locations. There are CG background characters, which means we can have bigger crowd scenes. It means really that we are able to push the boundaries of what was traditionally quite a contained medium.
So I guess it means that even though the heart of this film could have been made 20, 30, 40 years ago, the longer you wait, the more spectacular this looks as someone else invents another thing that fits on that thing that makes it look more beautiful.
Basically, yeah. I don't think we could have probably made this very movie 10 years ago. But I think part of that is that these inventions that you're talking about, these innovations, we're creating them in order to make our previous movies. So the last 4 movies have led to technology and innovations that have enabled us to push further. Someone actually said to me, they were like, oh, because of all these new inventions, doesn't it get easier? And it's like, well, no, because it means we tell more complicated stories.
When people go and see this, then give us a scene that you're particularly proud of, which is possible in 2019, which wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago.
Okay. I think one of my favorite scenes is towards the end of the movie. I don't want to ruin anything, but it's a big action sequence where the heroes are being chased across a collapsing ice bridge miles up in the Himalayas. And then they proceed to have a battle with the villain whilst hanging from ropes. I wanted it to feel very kinetic. I wanted to almost shoot it like a live action sequence. So it's quick cuts. It's technically very, very challenging. Some poor animator was manipulating these puppets as they were dangling from the air. That scene alone probably took over a year to shoot.
Wow. Tell us about the casting. You mentioned this hopeless explorer. Sir Lionel Frost, as voiced by Hugh Jackman. Tell us, the idea behind Sir Lionel was what?
Well, he was influenced by this rich tradition of British upper crust explorers, and I'm poking fun at that. I wanted him to be like an old school leading man. And I think part of his character is the fact that he's self-obsessed in a way, and that's quite a challenging character to get on board with. So I wanted to make sure I cast someone who would take you along for the ride. And I think that's why we went with Hugh Jackman. I mean, actually, when I was writing the character, I had Hugh Jackman in mind.
Because he looks a bit like Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
I mean, not so much that it couldn't be voiced by Hugh Grant, but it was...
Another Hugh. Yeah, some of the original sketches, I incorporated a little bit of Mr. Jackman into them. He was always in my mind. And I think it's because even though this character misbehaves somewhat and has a journey to go on emotionally, he's always charming. And that's Hugh. He's effortlessly charming.
He is. And when you ask him to sing just a little bit, he's very good at it.
Well, there was one bit where he was in the booth and he was just doing vocal warm-ups. And, of course, I kept that in.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's very good at posh English.
He's better than me. His accent's better than mine.
Is Leica the first thing that we see when the film starts? Is that a Leica film?
Yes, it's one of the first things to come up, yeah.
What does that mean, do you think, when people see that as the first logo that comes up, or one of the first logos? What does that brand mean, do you think, for people?
I hope it means quality. I hope it means, I think to most people it means stop motion. We're one of the few studios that are still pursuing this amazing old art form. I think it means a unique perspective. I think we have a distinct voice. We tell our own kinds of stories.
How would you define that voice?
I would like to think that every time we make a movie, it's a little bit different from the last. So people sometimes ask, like, what's your brand? What's the style? And I think what's great is that we don't necessarily have one. I think what's important is to try and tell stories that other people aren't telling. That's great for me as an artist, as a writer and a director, is that we're never trying to copy what the other studios are doing. We're doing our own thing.
Do you think this is more colourful and mainstream? I'm using mainstream as a compliment here. You know, it's not a Pixar movie, it's a Leica movie, but it seems to have a greater palette.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, and that was purposeful. I think, part of that was this grand journey across half of the globe. And so I wanted the visuals to this big, bright, kaleidoscopic world that these characters are discovering. We always knew it was going to be a step in a different direction for us in terms of the look of it. And I think that was one of the reasons why we wanted to do it. It's our first movie where the main characters are not children. It's our first truly Technicolor almost movie. And I think that's why we wanted to do it, because we hadn't done something like that before.
It feels, although clearly it's been going on, you've said 5 years / 15 years for a project. It feels about as topical as, a Leica film about a Victoriana and exploring can be. We get to hear the voices of some pretty small men with some small kind of exceptionalist ideas.
Yeah.
Here.
I'm
keeping it vague.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. I mean, it surprised me at how topical some of the elements are. I think one of the things the story is saying is, this is a story about breaking down barriers, not building walls. Let's just say that.
Okay, that's also suitably vague. Who is it, Chris, given that this is very much your film, you wrote and directed it, who knows when it's time to stop? Who knows when you go, okay, step away?
The producer.
There really isn't anything else that you can do to make it better.
I don't
you
know
winced
whether...
when I asked you that.
Yeah, because I don't know whether I ever have that feeling, like it's done, it's done. Luckily, on movies, you have a schedule and you have plenty of people whose job it is to make sure you stick to it. But I don't think movies are ever truly finished. You just get told to stop, you know. There's still things that I would go back and tweak. I'm very happy with it. But I think that's the same with painting. It's the same with writing. I think it's the same with anything artistic.
If it was down to you,
we'd still be going.
You'd still go. Dare I ask you what you're working on next? If we go back to that book of ideas that you've got, which has been taken 15 years to get Missing Link to the screen, what else is there?
Well, maybe in the next 15 years. There's a few things that I'm keen on getting into. I definitely want to spend a bit of time writing. I love that part of the process. It's weird because being the writer and director, you start off the project just yourself in a room for months on end, not talking to anyone. And then the directing part, you're surrounded by 450 people every day. You know, it's definitely polar opposites. I'm kind of craving that being on my own and writing phase. Although I've got to say, I only finished this movie a couple of weeks ago and I need a vacation.
You certainly do. And just on the subject of the writing, I checked with you before you started. My favourite line in the movie turns out to be your favourite line in the movie, which we're not going to mention because when it comes, it's joyful. But who is it who says this line that I like so much?
It's Emma Thompson. And I think probably the best part about it is it's Emma Thompson playing a Yeti.
Yeah.
I mean, who gets to have Emma Thompson as their Yeti?
And this line comes up before the ice bridge collapses.
It's right at the end.
Yeah, so when Emma Thompson's Yeti yells her final instruction to her troops, that's the line. That's the line.
Watch out for it. Yeah. Yes.
Chris Butler, what a relief that it's all done and dusted and you could go on holiday. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.